Then tonight's reorganization, and the clerk will do the nomination.
Are there any nominations for the chairman position?
I'll nominate Mike Garland.
I'll nominate Ann.
Is there a second?
Second, Mike Garland.
Okay, are there, okay, I guess I was supposed to ask, are there any other nominations?
I'd
for
like to
chair?
make a nomination for vice chair, Ann Weston.
Excuse me, what do you want?
Okay, are there any other nominations for chairman? You are,
I'll nominate Ann.
yeah, Louise nominated Ann. Okay. Is there a second to that vote? Nomination,
Obviously not.
If there are no other nominations, I'll close the nominations and call for a vote. All in favor of Mike Garland as chairman?
Aye.
Aye.
Sting.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, vice chair.
You turn it back over to the chair.
Oh,
You don't need to give me a, no conflict twice.
All right. Are there any nominations for vice chairman?
I'd like to nominate Ann Weston as vice chair.
Is there, a-
I decline.
okay. Is there any other nomination for vice chairman?
I'll nominate Mr. Rice.
I'll second that.
Pardon me, sir, but you can't second the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Weston. Is there a second for Mr. Reich's nomination for vice chairman?
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations for vice chairman? If there are none, all in favor of Dan Reich being vice chairman, please
Aye.
signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. First item on the agenda is at 7 o'clock, John Stelmach, JW Land Development LLC, an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for property located at 50 to 94 Prospect Street, Marlborough, Massachusetts. Is there a motion to open?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Mr. Stelmach.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Mr. Rockwood, Dr. Rockwood, gonna be attending?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. What I have for you, Sheila, here is the green cards.
okay.
Because Margaret Washburn, as I'm sure everybody knows, she's working another job at the evenings, so she can, I don't think, ever make a Wednesday night meeting at this point in time. So I'm kind of filling in for her and representing myself. Well, there's the 2 cards for the DEP.
Okay,
As part of the bylaws, I know that it was requested to, if possible, with the owner's permission, to go 100 feet onto a budding property to determine and check out wetlands. And I did send out a registered certified letter, which I brought as a copy with the green card with that, to the Sibley's piece of property, which is on the northern border of the Prospect Street property. And I did not get a response from them, so as a result, there really wasn't any walking or determinations that, you know, we could go in depth on the property because I didn't want to go without their permission.
Certainly.
Okay, so there's a copy of the letter that I sent with the card, which is for your records if you'd like to have it. Other than that, I think maybe there's more questions for Dr. Rockwood.
I know that, what I was going to say, John, is that Dan Reich and I, we tried to walk the property. We
Okay.
walked along the border
Mhm.
of the lot on Prospect Street, and there was no easy way for us to gain access to it. I don't know if you have a specific access point, or how you specifically get onto that property. But I know that, you know, it's a big parcel of property, obviously,
Tough.
and so I didn't know what frame of reference really there was.
So this, I believe, that is the barn. I believe this is where we were parked. And that's that property next door. So we were walking around
Yeah, we
hereabouts.
The perimeter, right there.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's better zoomed out.
Up down on the southeast corner of the property is the original Chance house.
All right,
This one?
That's usually where I park.
okay.
And, you know, if any of the board members that want to go to the property to walk it, I mean, I'd recommend that you just park there. The house is unoccupied at this point in time.
All right,
You know, it would be okay to do that. As far as getting through the property itself, there are a couple of cart paths that are through the property, that take you through the middle of the property, but it is a pretty densely wooded property.
right.
There are borders, the borders of the property on the northern side and on the westerly side are pretty well defined by stone walls. The westerly side property, the stone wall is you know, deteriorated to a degree, so in some places it's hard to follow. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
There is a path that runs right from behind the house, and it goes and intersects into the main path that basically runs right through the center of the property almost. I don't know if it used to be an old road or what.
Has anyone else had an opportunity to go out to the site?
Perhaps you'd like to hear Dr. Rockwood?
Indeed, I would.
Okay, last Thursday, I went out to the site with Margaret. She had flagged 3 areas of wetlands, 2 of which are now shown on the final plan here. There's an area of bordering vegetated wetlands along the western property boundary that's associated with an off-site intermittent stream. And there's an area of bordering vegetated wetlands located along the eastern property, sort of the northern portion of the eastern property that's associated with a culvert located at the northern end. The culvert's actually located just off property. Those areas are both bordering vegetated wetlands. There'd also be vegetated wetlands under the bylaw that have a 100-foot buffer zone under the regulations. And they'd have a 100-foot, 50-foot, and 25-foot buffer zone under the bylaw regulations. Margaret originally flagged an area in the north central portion of the property that actually goes against the Sibley property. And she provided half of a DEP field form for that. No other field forms were provided in the filing itself. And basically her own analysis showed that the area wasn't a wetland, but she flagged it out of the growing season, probably based best upon some drainage features she observed. The vegetation wasn't even close to being wetland. It was predominated by upland species. The soils were also generally non-hydric.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, that area wasn't a wetland under the Act because it didn't border anything, and it wasn't a vegetated wetland under the bylaw because it didn't meet the requirements to be so. So I asked that it be deleted from the plan. So they show the 2 bordering vegetated wetlands, freshwater wetlands, and the various buffer zones on the property. I reviewed other mapping and the like, and basically following the site walk, based on the stream mapping and stream stats, the stream located off property to the west is intermittent, would be designated intermittent under the regulations. So there's no riverfront area associated with that. The stream is basically over 100 feet from the property, and it's over 100 feet from the northwestern property corner. It's a pretty inside stream with, at that point, no wetlands associated with it. So it's a pretty easy call relative to where the boundary is. And I noticed nothing within 100 feet to the north of the property from areas that I can look at. So what you have on the plan is what there is relative to resource areas and buffer zone. There's no riverfront area, there's no bordering land subject to flooding, there's no depressions on the property that would qualify as isolated land subject to flooding under either the regulations or the bylaw regulations. So we're left with simply vegetated wetlands and buffer zone, and under the bylaw regulations, buffer zone and resource area.
Exactly. Any questions from the board? Yes, sir.
I didn't have any questions on the material itself, except just a couple observations. Dr. Rothman did put in his report that the applicant has overpaid the filing fee on the bylaw side by $50, so we do owe Mr. Stelmach $50.
Okay.
It's advertising costs.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah,
Okay.
for
All
advertising
right.
costs.
I just wanted to make sure, 'cause I thought you were charging $75 for the advertising.
No, it's $25 for the ANRAD, isn't it? 100 for the ANRAD, and then 50 for the advertising. It's almost 50 for the advertising.
I just wanted to make sure that we didn't
Yeah.
owe him any money.
Oh, I wouldn't overcharge him.
Well, I'm not saying you would, I just want to
No,
make sure.
thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Sheila. Just a couple things, and it may be a little early to bring this up, but I know that you're trying to set your boundary line so that you can obviously design your subdivision.
Right.
And Dr. Rothman did make a couple of additional points to you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was wondering if you could share with me your comments relative to things that he should think about as he's proceeding with his design.
Okay, I understand that.
That's all right, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
There was basically this was two lots, and apparently the lot line has been reconfigured so that the property that's not part of the ANRAD is now 5 acres in size rather than the 2 acres that it originally was.
Okay.
And it has a very irregular lot line, as you can see. I asked that the plan clearly outline the area that's subject to the ANRAD, because we don't want a misconception that the entire property was reviewed by this. But the lot configuration makes this site access without a wetland crossing off of the eastern property boundary essentially impossible. There is upland site access from the south off of Prospect Street, and basically cross through the wetland. You're going to impact the 25 and 50-foot buffer zones associated with that. And this is sort of a new process with the commission with the bylaw and the bylaw regulations, and it's sort of a new process for developers and engineers that are coming before the commission. So they need to be aware of waiver requirements and the like relative to doing work any work within 25 feet is going to trigger a waiver analysis. And any work within 50 feet in an area that provides wildlife habitat is going to trigger a waiver analysis. And also, there's sort of a requirement in the bylaw regs relative to a wildlife habitat evaluation, although the procedures for such aren't set forth in the regulations. So, so that's something to consider relative to site access. For example, if the northern property boundary of the lot that was being retained by the current owner were shifted to the south somewhat, you could actually access the site there without a wetland crossing. So it's sort of creating a hardship. It's not your fault or anyone's fault. It's the lot configuration is creating a hardship relative to site access off of Prospect Street.
So it sounds like some creative engineering would be required.
Or a less intensive development of the property, or a cul-de-sac of greater length allowed by the planning board, or several options. So, there's lots of options. But you just need to be aware of the permitting requirements under the bylaw.
Thank you. Ms. Weston?
And thank you. I just wanted to bring this up because, as John said, this is a new process, and I know that you're going to be going to design stage. I saw your preliminary subdivision, and I thought, speaking just for myself, it seemed appropriate just to bring these to your attention, just so that you can think about them as you're designing your project. And obviously, we're going to be needing an alternatives analysis for your wetlands crossing, because there are other ways to access the site without that crossing. So although we're here for the ANRAD, and I understand that,
Right.
I just felt it prudent to bring those to your attention.
Yeah, and I am aware of those and have been aware of that. But what is being retained by the owner, I do not have a choice on. So, and that is relatively, the lines have their configuration, the property has its shape, as it does, to try to take the development into consideration, but mainly to take his requests into consideration as far as what he wants to retain for the property. I don't have a choice, so does it create the hardship, you know, that it's saying? I don't think so, because it's not on the table. I don't have the opportunity to buy that piece of property. You know, it's just that simple. I have the opportunity to buy this, and this only. I know that it does impact. The problem with, and I'll just address it quick, the problem that I will have with the planning board is very simple. Doing any crossing up in this remaining area of the property is because of Linden Street, across the street. Typically, the planning board likes to see, because of safety issues of traffic, a 200-foot site access and they would prefer to see a direct intersection across from one another, instead of an intersection being 20, 30, 40 feet down the road. They like, I think the bylaws actually call for 200 feet, you know, which is basically a line of sight. That's going to be a major problem, bringing in a road up in this area, which is basically not going to make it feasible. Just the configuration of the land, the cost of it would probably eliminate the subdivision, basically.
That's what the alternative analysis is about,
Exactly.
explaining the
Exactly.
rationale behind the project design.
You know, we have looked at, the board knows that I've done, you know, that we have very solid intentions on trying to preserve as much wetlands and take care of what we have to do to live within the new bylaws, which I do have to get a little bit more familiar with.
Is it open space subdivision consideration?
That part hasn't, we haven't gotten that far.
Okay, I'm
All
sorry,
right.
I just...
Yeah, no, we haven't gone that far. We have a basic layout of what we think is, will create a nice subdivision for the town, trying to go by the planning board rules and regulations, subdivision bylaws. And now, obviously, we have to take this step first to get the wetlands delineated before we can do any final hydrology studies. Everybody can see how the property basically flows. The water goes downhill. There's basically 3 exits of where the water goes off of the property. And, you know, we have to take those in consideration as far as to try to keep those somewhat in line with what they are. Overall, the property is a nice property as far as sloping and levelness. It isn't like Prospect Hills. You all remember Prospect Hills, and you all remember the cuts and the fills and the amount of earth I moved up there to create that road. This is much simpler,
It's
much
flatter
easier,
than in here.
less of an impact, I believe as well. Will there be some concessions, and will I be, you know, maybe trying to do work within the bylaws and do as much to protect the wetlands and maybe create more wetlands or some process? I can't say no to that. Most likely the answer to be yes, because if I do a crossing down by Booth here, it's going to be directly across from Booth. It will require a crossing of that area. This area mainly down here, if you know, my observation of it is there was a drainage culvert which is up here by the driveway, and basically that captures water, and you know, years past they let the water run down the side of the road. This is where that water has run down the side of the road, because there is another drainage culvert down in the northeast corner of the property, and that connects to another drainage culvert further down on Prospect Street. So those, we just finally actually determined that yesterday by doing some cammering up there, because that's all part of the hydrology study and so forth that Ken Hodgins is going to need on the property. So my idea is, I don't know that the wetlands would have been there if the water wasn't directed there, but that's neither the case, neither here nor there. They're there, and we do have to deal with it. It doesn't make them any less of a wetland, and it doesn't make them any less subject to the rules and regulations. And I think you all know my history in the past. Margaret, usually guides me and advises me on a lot of things, and I think she's very, very competent in what she's done. And we're going to try to put together a plan that makes sense. And conceptuals, yes, we have them. That's why we have the irregularity, and that was basically to try to leave as much property as we could, because that was the request that was handed to me, okay? And, well, given to me, of 5.5 acres about, and that's what that represents.
John, when do you think we might see a notice of intent? Ballpark.
If I'm trying to decide, I have a meeting with Ken tomorrow, and I don't know, we'll do a notice of intent, obviously separately on the road. But what we're trying to decide on the site, and part of tonight is, we'll help make that decision tomorrow, is in the past, I think the board knows that usually I have filed notices of intent on any of the lots that were created separately, instead of filing a blanket on the whole subdivision. We're going to be looking at that tomorrow, because up on Prospect Street, that's the way we did it. Curtis Meadows, that's the way we did it. That's the way I think I've done most everything at this point. So, notice of intent, probably, it depends upon how quick I get through planning and get the design done. Once this plan is, approved or modified or whatever has to be done, but once it's set, then that's when I can now go into design and official design and look at it. But it's pretty much, I don't have any real flexibility with this piece of property being maintained,
John, are you satisfied with the plan?
Yeah, I'm very satisfied. I've reviewed it 3 or 4 times, and I provided a second set of comments just on the plan to the survey, so the corrections can be made.
Sure.
2 comments. That little northern projection is, I think, to preserve some little meadow area there on that initial property. That's why there's that weird shape. There's an area, you can actually see it on the open area to the,
Yes.
to the north of the house up there. It's basically right up there, yeah. That's so that can be maintained with the original house. I think that was one of the requirements.
Yes, it was.
So that's why that lot shape is a little weird. The other thing is, relative to the alternatives analysis, given that it's a fairly narrow wetland area, you might want to just consider a bridge.
Yep.
It's still an alteration, but there's no fill. Keeps you out of water quality, certainly Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
And just
We're looking at that. That is one concept that is on the table at this point. All right.
considering it's such a short span, you're
Exactly.
talking $300 a square foot for a bridge.
Right.
So when it's narrow like this, it's not bad. If you're trying to span a 100-foot wetland crossing,
Exactly.
you're starting to talk hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And these are the things that we obviously will look at for the protection of the wetlands and, taking the bylaws to adhere to the bylaws.
Because the bridge would result in alteration to BBW, not fill, so mitigation wouldn't necessarily require construction of a replication area. You could do augmented plantings within the wetland to compensate for the lost habitat, for example. So there's a lot of opportunities on the bridge to avoid trying to create replication areas. If you don't have to create a replication area, you're not impacting the 25-foot
Right.
buffer zone, the 50-foot buffer zone unnecessarily.
We'll look at it. I mean, the issue with the road is when you do an intersection, you're going to be meeting another road. You have your curvature and you have your,
Right.
requirements as far as pitch on the road
Right.
and coming in, and that's one thing that, is a consideration to take a look at down there. But can we do it? That's another thing that we haven't gotten that far
It
yet.
really doesn't have to be that high, it doesn't have to be way off the ground, it really, as
not
long as
a lot
water
that-
flow can get under it.
Yeah,
you're
and,
good.
and there's not a lot of water flow that does go down there that I can see on a regular basis. So, but yeah, you're right. That irregular shape, they wanted that meadow.
It's all that metal.
Yep.
Okay.
There's some
And,
pine saplings in there, and I walked through it.
The project basically will consist of a cul-de-sac road and A&R lots. So some of the A&R lots will have their issues that we're going to have to address.
How many lots exactly? Or approximately, rather?
There will be approximately 7 A&R lots. Okay. And we'll be doing entrances if the road is approved and everything is gets in through the way that we're envisioning it at this point in time, 2 of the lots we will access from the road that we built. There will still be 2 additional lots, plus potentially 3 lots up in here that we have to look at. So that's what I'm up against at this point in time. So once this gets approved, then that's when we'll start to look at how are we going to do this. You know, do we have to change these lines, which I don't have any flexibility on at this point.
It doesn't sound like you're considering open space development.
I have not as of yet, but that's not saying that it's off the table.
You sort of have to jump through the conventional subdivision first
Sure.
before you go there anyways.
Right.
So,
All right, are there any other comments? Any comments from the audience? Okay,
To answer your question, hopefully as soon as possible with a plan for an NOI.
all right. All right.
Andrea.
There being no further discussion, is there a motion to close?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? It's a vote. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Are you going to be around? After the meeting, you're sitting here?
John, you need an extra plan here? I've got a little more than I need.
I did include findings in the last section.
Want to take
She
a couple
will
of
ask
those?
to
Sure, I'll
paste
just do
that
that.
inside of the Word document.
I'll keep these.
That'd be great.
Do you want to issue that decision now then?
Have a good night.
Good night.
Yes.
Good night, John.
Good night.
That I would make a motion that we issue an ORAD based on the delineations that have been submitted to us, the updated plan that we received this evening. And I'd like to see the board consider using, Dr. Rothman set forth everything we need in the decision in the report. So I would incorporate that into my motion.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote.
Send you the Word document with the findings. It's really
Okay.
just the findings that you want to incorporate.
All right, great, thank you. And if we sign
Wait till she comes back. As soon as Sheila comes back, we can get started. Okay. The next matter on the agenda is a 7:15 PM hearing for Herb Chambers. Request to amend the order of conditions for property located at 33 Appleton Road in Auburn, Massachusetts. Is there a motion to open?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see you all again. Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you, sir.
About 2 years ago, this commission granted an order of conditions to a project at 33 Appleton Street. I believe most of you were on the commission then, so you may be very familiar with what I'm talking about. The project started construction late last fall, and they're at the point now where they're preparing to install the pre-manufactured bridge, which will connect the 33 Appleton parking lot to the Herb Chambers dealership at 809. In laying out the path of that bridge, they've noticed that there are about a dozen or so saplings that are kind of in the way. When we designed this bridge, we selected this path because we thought it was the most open. It's been a couple years have passed now, not that this stuff has grown out in those 2 years, but it's evident now that it is in the way. They could place the bridge over it and the saplings be bent out of the way, but we didn't want to do that.
Sure.
So we're asking for an amendment to remove by hand about 10 to 12 of these saplings that are within the wetland area. Just cut them at grade, carry them out by hand, and not pull the stumps out. There really aren't any stumps anyway. But minimize the disturbance to just traffic, basically. Take these trees out of the way of the path of the bridge. In my letter to the commission, I did provide some photos of that. I believe some of you may have already been to the site and seen the trees are mostly on the 8 or 9 inside, and they were all flagged with orange flagging by the contractor. So those are the trees that we're proposing to take out. And you can see, I think the largest one may be about 3 inches in diameter. There's really not a lot of greenery on them or canopy whatsoever. So that is what we're asking for. There's no additional changes to the plans other than this sapling.
Do you know what the height of the pedestrian bridge will be over the grass?
Yep, the bridge, I think we designed it to have clearance of 2 feet above the wetland grade, so that's 2 feet from finished grade to the bottom of the steel beam. The bridge, we've just gotten shop drawings for it. It is going to remain that same height, so we'll have that 2 foot clearance.
Okay.
The deck is maybe 8 inches higher than that, but the clear span from the finished grade to the bottom of the steel beam is 2 feet.
And that's the length of the bridge?
It's about 60 feet.
Are there any questions? Any questions from the audience? There being none, is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Okay. Is there
I'll
a
second that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not getting too far without him.
I think they're trying to
Surprised the commission would
No.
have
Yeah, he'll be back real soon.
Spare vehicle?
Chief.
Plus it's his son's keys.
The next item on the agenda is MACC annual dues. So since I didn't put it on the agenda, can you enlighten us, Ms. Conrad?
There is a bill, and I think it's like $365, which I have in the office, and I've got a PO on a bill schedule for it, so.
Okay, can we continue that to the next meeting?
We certainly can.
Okay. Do we need a motion? I would say just carry it over then to the next meeting.
Sure.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next item is an order of conditions for Faith Avenue. Okay. Have members of the board seen Ms. Washburn's July 2nd, 2014 letter?
Yes.
Okay. I spoke to Margaret today, and the letter, I think the letter speaks for itself, but Ms. Washburn amplified what the letter says, which is that she has grave conditions about the replication area successfully being implemented in the area next to and actually above the house, the foundation of a house lot that was demolished by the applicant some time ago. We had been to the site, we went to the site back on May 31st. There has been extensive communication between Mr. Kravosky and Ms. Washburn on the site. To my mind, this application has been vetted and explored perhaps more than any other application that has come before this board. But I'd like to hear comments from the board members on what they think. Ms. Weston? Do you have any comments on this?
Yes, I do. Given Ms. Washburn's letter, it seems pretty clear to me that we don't have a whole lot of choice on this, I don't think. But to issue denial for failure to meet the performance standards and for insufficient information. I actually am trying to find it. I actually spent quite a few hours the last few days working with Ms. Washburn to formulate. I have no idea what the board's going to do. I really didn't want to be the first one to issue my thoughts, but you know, I wanted, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear what the rest of the board members think, and depending on what you, I do have something prepared for.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Members?
Didn't seem like, you know, she seemed like she had a lot of concerns with the soils and with the way that the water would go.
Can you speak up because that air conditioner might not be here?
Yeah, I mean, she had a lot of concerns about this plan for that area, and that the water would not, the water would essentially not go where they were planning to make the replication area.
I know she had concerns about the level of the water table as well.
Right.
It
And
really sounded like it would not be appropriate to try to replicate a wetland in that area.
that was what I took from her report as well.
I mean, basically, my reading of it was kind of like, you know, putting the round peg into a square hole. That it's not the right place for it.
I think, I'm sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Also, the fact that only one soil sample was taken in the proposed re-replication area definition. We have no clue what's part of the replication area, which contains a house foundation
Right.
from a house that used to be on Cape Ave. And we have no idea what's under that foundation. And that would be part of the replication area. So you have no idea. And the other issue is that in the one boring that they did take, as you probably read in her report, you had to read in her report, there was no water at 90 inches
Right.
in the middle of June.
Exactly.
So if there's no water now at 90 inches, how's that going to work?
Well, and also if there's an area where there's a desire to not disturb the non-native backfill soils in that area, that sounds like another way that's just going to cut against having a successful replication area.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Is there a motion then?
If I,
Yes, please.
I did, like I said, I've been working on this for a few days.
I know you have.
And Margaret gave me some ideas, I expanded upon it, I wrote an introduction to it. She reviewed it, she had some comments, we've been back and forth and back and forth.
Okay.
So anyways, I know it's kind of long, and if you do decide to go with it, I certainly have the Word document that I can send to you. Thank you. So, you know, it's 4 pages, actually it's a little bit of 5 pages. I've got to reorient the performance standards that are not met at the end into the rest of the document, but I don't know if you'd like to. And I didn't give it to you before because it would be inappropriate for me to have shared it before.
That's fine. I have no problem with that. I think before we talk about the, well, first of all, what's before us is the notice of intent for Faith Avenue, and we have to, I'm asking for a board member to make a motion with respect to an order of conditions or a denial of an order of conditions. Is there a motion?
I would make that motion to the issue of denial, and I did check with Ms. Washburn and also I had a conversation with Joe Domino yesterday from DEP. Under the denial section on the order document itself, 2 of the reasons are, one is insufficient information, and one is failure to meet the performance standards. Mr. Domino suggested that we check off both, because this does substantiate.
Right.
So that would be part of my motion.
Right. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. And is this substantially complete? Or just, it is? In terms of the format?
I just have to put I just ran out of time last night.
I understand.
The performance standards that are at the end, I'm going to put in, I would suggest you put in under the performance standards page here. I just ran out of time.
Okay.
Could you answer me the question, would you still be signing an order of conditions and then check off the
Yes, I
denial?
think it's page 3 or 4 on the standard form, it says denial. You
Okay.
check off that, you put denial on the front of your document, on the order of conditions form itself.
Okay.
You put denial, you type in denial.
Okay.
And I can certainly give you one of these, Sheila, but I will email you the document.
Okay.
Actually, I think you have one, so.
Okay, and just to clarify, the denial with those boxes checked off will incorporate the narrative that has been prepared by Ms. Weston.
Do you need to make that as a motion?
Probably. Is there a motion?
Motion to include the
To
draft.
include, yes, the narrative that will accompany the denial of the order of conditions.
I motion that Ms. Weston's draft be included with the denial of order of conditions.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you.
You second that, please? I'm sorry.
I missed it. All right, the next item on the agenda is a request for a certificate of compliance for 275 Washington Street, Grove Street Properties. When did that come in? Or has that been carried over from other
Grove
agendas?
Street just came in.
How about 275 Washington Street?
I'm sorry,
Property.
Grove Street Properties just came in.
Okay,
And Full Power Review was a carryover because they wanted to do a site inspection. But I've got the as-built plans of both here.
Is 275 worth?
Ms. Weston.
We're going to talk about 4 Paul Revere Road. Mrs. Downey and I visited the site
Okay,
a couple of weeks ago. We felt that most everything was sufficiently stabilized. However, we did see a couple of areas on the back side of the property where there seems to be a little bit, they've already removed their erosion control measures.
all right.
And there does seem to be a bit of erosion, not significant, but they may want to tend to it now before it becomes a problem.
Are you suggesting perhaps a letter?
Well, perhaps a letter along with the, I don't think it's sufficient to deny a certificate of compliance,
Okay,
but I think it should be brought to their attention. That's just my opinion.
all right. Louise, what do you think?
I agree.
Okay,
Yes, I agree.
all right. Is there a,
Definitely was some erosion there.
can you, I guess, be more specific about the type of erosion or the amount of erosion that's going on?
It's just a small amount of erosion past the grassed area
Okay,
that has occurred. It appears as though they're putting privacy fence, they have a privacy fence installed along one side of the property,
okay.
and it appears as though there's going to be a chain link to the rear of the property.
Mhm.
Between them and the wetland, and I'm kind of wondering if maybe there's not a little bit of an intent to drop lawn clippings
Okay.
past the grass area.
Did you see any?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So I just think that maybe they should be reminded that that's a violation.
I think that's a great idea.
And like I said, it's not significant,
Okay,
but stop it now before it comes.
all right. Is there a motion to send a letter to the owner of 4 Paul Revere Road to highlight fact that there is erosion occurring at the property and that they need to be reminded that grass clippings should not be dumped in that area.
I'll make that motion.
Yes?
Are we making a motion to issue a certificate of compliance along with that letter? Because that's what,
My first motion is on the letter. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Is there a motion regarding a certificate of compliance for 4 Paul Revere Road?
I would make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's a vote.
Alrighty.
Should I just
Okay.
Yes.
Do we have a written request for the certificate of compliance at 275 Washington?
Yes, we do.
I didn't get my packet.
I did not
No, it's because I just did it recently.
Okay.
I believe it was within the time frame.
Was there an as-built plan?
Yes, there is, right here. Just one plan. Standard. Do you want to look at that?
This is sort of 25.
Is that the one with the replication?
Entire parking lot's in one location.
Where is 275? Whereabouts?
Isn't this the one where we previously, there was an issue with storage of materials in the
Yes.
buffer zone?
Yeah, they did away
Yeah,
with the
so-
replication area, right? Moved it, didn't they? I mean, through the
wait.
board.
I
Oh,
think
that one, okay.
we probably need to pull the file for 275
Yeah.
Washington Street, and I think we need to take a site visit.
Yeah, we haven't been there in a while.
Yeah, there's no marking of the 25-foot buffer zone on here.
Yeah, it would be,
Was 25-foot buffer zone
When it- when
that's
it's-
at that time?
Oh, well, this is an old plan?
there's
It's an
no
old
file.
filing.
Oh, I see. I
It
see.
was the next, it was 273, I think, that there was the issue.
That's right.
And then they wanted to get rid of the replication area right in there because the trucks couldn't come in, so new
It was
tenants
right,
moved in
as I recall, it was like
275.
right in the middle of.
Yeah, it's right there, it's
the
still
driveway.
there.
Oh, yeah, so it was this.
See, that's the
Yeah.
replication area, they moved it.
Okay,
That's an old,
yeah, so I think we need to take a look. So I would just say carry this over to the next meeting.
I can scan this plan and email it to everybody.
That'd be great.
Fancy.
Thank you.
Very fancy technology.
The next item is a gas pipeline that's proposed from Richmond to Cregan. Sheila, did you put that on the agenda?
Yes, that was an email that we received.
Discussion.
And you, did
Oh.
you have some question on it or something? Thought it should be on the agenda.
I don't recall.
I remember
Do
the
you remember
email.
getting the
It
email?
was some,
I guess my question is, what impact, if any, would it have on Auburn?
nothing really, I think they were just looking for support.
Support for-
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with anything jurisdictionally.
Okay.
It was more like making a statement of
Yeah.
support or
I think they want
whatever
support
towards.
from other conservation commissions because they will be going through and destroying wetlands and so forth as they carry
Oh,
it through.
right
And
away.
they're
I did
concerned
email that
about
to everyone. I'll email it
explosiveness or
again.
something, I don't know.
So they're looking for support from other conservation commissioners to try to vote it down.
Okay.
Need more information.
I mean, was there a plan for this? So it's kind of hard to,
They just sent like,
no, I get it, but it's hard to kind of visualize a gas pipeline without knowing the impact, you
is
know?
it a proposed
Yes.
thing,
I believe
right?
so,
It's
yeah.
proposed and
Oh,
they're
yeah,
just trying
it's
to,
proposed, yeah.
They're trying to oppose it.
yeah,
Maybe we can
Right.
carry it forward just until we get more information.
Sure.
I think they're waiting for the governor to sign the agreement to put it through. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
even going to show up on the ballot. I think it's the governor that has to approve. And they're,
July 25th sticks in my head for some reason, I don't know why.
I read it
Okay.
last week sometime, and a lot has happened since
Yeah.
then, so I can't remember everything that was on it.
There's an item, the Auburn Middle School, we just carrying that forward?
Yes.
Okay. Before we get to miscellaneous, I'd like to talk about 49 Wallace Avenue. Some of us had like gone out there a few weeks ago, and I mean,
It was last week.
was it last week? Time flies. The gentleman who owns the property is, there's a fair amount of, well, he's cleared the lot, and it appears that he's brought in dirt to level out the lot, although it's not a level lot. I believe we got someone called saying that there was an impact on the wetland area, that it was improperly filling in the buffer zone. We went out there and we actually walked out to, there's an intermittent stream out there, and by my estimation, it was at least 200 feet away from the edge of the,
What was the distance you thought?
at least 200 feet.
200 feet? Okay.
And
Because I think
probably-
he was planning
probably
on
more.
filling it a little bit more.
Well,
I mean, it was a stream channel of the woods, but we had to walk in a fair distance
Yeah.
to even see it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was nowhere near,
It was not 100
There's no
feet
impact.
from the stream.
Yeah.
no, it was,
I think he brought in more fill than he should have without going through the planning board.
Right.
I guess
That
was
was
the
a lot of
first
fill.
issue.
Yeah, that's true.
And what he explained to me and some others was that he was wanting to have level off the lots with his neighbors, kind of make it all
Like that.
level.
I mean, there may be an issue with respect to this, the soil that's being brought in there, but it's not our issue.
Right.
It's not within our jurisdiction.
Right.
And so, again, having gone out there and looked to see if there was any impact on the buffer zone of the brook, there wasn't any that we could determine. So I would, speaking solely for myself, I was satisfied that he wasn't, violating the bylaw or the regulations or the Wells Protection Act. And then, the other item before we get to miscellaneous is Hill Street and Prospect Street. This was a site visit that Dan and I made last week.
Lisa and I went to the one.
And what it appeared is that it was hard to, we didn't really want to go onto the property. I mean, I didn't see any violation. I think we did see some grass clippings maybe near a wetland area, but it was not within the wetland area. What observation did you make?
Well, I was advised about this months ago,
Okay.
and I know that there have been piles of dirt there on site that have been pushed into what were reportedly by the person who told the apartments.
Okay.
We too did not go on the owner's property, but we observed from the road. There does appear to be wetland vegetation up near the road, which kind of makes me wonder what's under the fill behind it. I felt that there could possibly be a violation because vegetation ends and the fill starts. And so it seems to me as though there must have been, I would think the vegetation must have gone on where the edge of the fill is. And based on what was reported to me by someone who lives fairly close, not about it. I don't know, maybe we need to speak with the owner, maybe we need to have a meeting or something to discuss it.
I mean, of course, the problem is that it would have been nice if we had a frame of reference, or if there was a beginning picture and then a current view.
True, but the existence of a wetland under fill can be documented through flood lines,
I understand that.
and you have, fill within wetland can be removed as long as it hasn't been in more than 2 years. So after 2 years.
All right, so is there a motion?
I think, I think I'd like to see the board have a discussion maybe with the property owner.
Okay,
Or you could issue an enforcement order if you wish to, but maybe you need to have a little more information. Maybe the property owner can enlighten you.
I think speaking for myself, I'd like to have a conversation with the property owner before I go ahead and issue the board, before the board issues an enforcement order.
And why don't we make a motion that we ask our clerk to send a letter to the property owner, I don't know who it is,
Okay,
asking them to perhaps come into the next meeting at whatever time is available on the agenda.
all right,
I'll second that.
all right, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote.
I don't know if it's on here, Mike, but
Yes.
the other property we made a site visit of where we had the collapsed culvert, what address was that?
Oh, yeah, we actually had gone out to look at the shed on
Winchester?
on Winchester. And next to that property, next to that lot is an adjacent lot. And it's actually a culvert with a long PVC pipe that goes underneath,
Number 2 you talked about.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
South Street.
Right.
the pavement.
Well, it's actually Winchester, but
Well,
the one in the corner.
Yeah, the one in the corner. By making further observations, we actually saw that there are building materials stacked up right on the back. Cinder blocks, wooden material.
The culvert is basically collapsing. The PVC pipe is jutting out from the banking. The banking is eroding away, and it just appears to the layperson as though that culvert was not installed properly. And then the banking is being supported in a way by cinder blocks and construction.
There's actually a stone wall, or what appears to be a stone wall, right adjacent to where that pipe's coming out, and that wall is badly undermined and it's starting to cave in.
And then there were storage of materials clearly within the buffer zone.
That's right, yeah?
Actually, this is my fault for not asking for this to be on the agenda sooner. Because when I heard about 4 Winchester, it was also told to me that there was wood and so forth stacked up in the channel. And in my haste here, I neglected to say anything about it. But you might recall several years ago when that person who owns the property now was Tim at the time.
Yes.
And she was having that pool put in the backyard. And they started that project and were starting to fill in that channel. And we stopped that and had them file for the key.
I do.
So the person who was the tenant then is now property owner. So it would seem as though she would know that she needed to file. So, and I had intended to put this on the agenda. It is not on the agenda tonight.
Well, we can...
But one of you could certainly issue an enforcement order on your signature.
Absolutely. But what I was going to say is that there really are 2 issues, I think. The first issue is that there are other building materials that are stored right in the bank and clearly, violate the regulations of the bylaw.
The culvert as well.
The culvert, though, I think is a town issue. I think it's a DPW issue.
I thought they were just overly fixing that, doing something recently.
How recently?
Yeah,
A week ago.
what's there is inadequate. I mean, just looking at it as a layperson, it doesn't look right.
What they had done is, if you remember, they replaced the guardrail there, and that was fairly recent.
Oh, maybe
They
that's what I
replaced the
was
drainage
thinking.
there too.
They did, but they didn't, I want to be kind here. It seems like a better job needs to be done.
Yeah.
That PVC pipe was about, what, 4 or 5 inch pipe?
Maybe 4 or 5 inch diameter
And it
maximum.
extends out probably 3 feet.
It juts out from the bank
So
noticeably.
And it's really not adequately supported.
It
So-
doesn't look right.
So I mean, I think again, it's not an issue, that's a separate issue from any enforcement order we issue to the owner of 2 Winchester.
Did we have the appropriate address? Because wasn't there a question of whether the address we have for the property owner, is that the correct one? Is it 2? Okay.
And by the way, I don't know what other members thought about the shed at 4 Winchester, but I didn't see a violation there.
It's like a house.
It doesn't look like it's
It
jurisdictional.
looks like a house, but and it may be an issue for someone else.
It's within 100, it's less than 100, it's only 65 feet from behind it.
Did you measure it?
The building commissioner who just left straight from the meeting.
She did file a
Didn't look
request
like
for
it, but-
determination. We're gonna hear that next
We have,
meeting.
that was in an email that
Hmm.
sent out.
Oh,
I sent it to the board.
all right, so I'm
I can
sorry,
find
that's,
it.
She filed an RDA.
Yeah, maybe we just didn't see it.
okay,
Yeah, she
that's,
just,
didn't look
well,
like
she
it,
just
but-
filed it, it'll be the next, yeah.
all right, so that's on for the next,
Yes.
okay, then that's not an issue then, but, all right. If either Dan or myself issue an enforcement order, we'll have to wait until the next meeting to get it ratified.
Okay.
But is there a motion to send a letter to the DPW alerting them of our concerns for the culvert? Yeah?
I would just, in my opinion, it's not an item listed on the agenda, so I don't think you can take a vote on it. You can issue an enforcement order with one person's signature.
I'm not talking about an enforcement order for
No,
two.
no. I understand that.
All right, then in that case, Sheila, can you put on the agenda for 7:23 the issue of the unsupported drain pipe at 2 Winchester?
To Winchester. And also about an enforcement order, or that doesn't have to go on the agenda?
Well, it seems
One of
like it's
us
going to be
will-
an enforcement
One
order.
of us will sign enforcement order tonight, and then
Okay.
it will go on the agenda for the next meeting
All right.
for ratification. Okay. All right, let's see, for Winchester, are we just carrying Route 12 and 20?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Ann?
Just a point, at the last meeting, you might recall, Mrs. Downey told us about a potential violation on Hampton Street. Unfortunately, it's not on the agenda this evening, so we can't vote on it. She and I did make a site visit there. I'm hoping that the clerk will put that on as an agenda item for the next meeting. We haven't investigated who the property owner is. I'm not certain whether it's within the town's right of way or if it's part of the property of that,
Forest Park.
Forest
Forest
Park,
Park
thank you, couldn't
condominiums,
get the name of it.
Okay.
You know, it's on the Hampton Street side of Forest Park. Forest Park runs between Hampton and Blacktop Street.
Okay.
So I'm not certain, there has been some filling going on there. So I think perhaps we need to investigate further before the next meeting so we can figure out who the property owner is.
Do we have a number, street number?
I don't, I need to have someone take a look at the plan because it's at the end of the driveway.
Okay.
Right, it parallels the street. So it's hard to say who's doing it. It could be from across the street, the landscape people.
All
It's
right.
right across the street from that medical building on Hampton Street.
Got it. Okay. So, Sheila, can we put Hampton Street on the agenda for the next meeting?
Certainly. I
Thank
think
you.
I already did that. Check.
Okay. The next item on the agenda are the minutes for May, well, we have several sets of minutes, May 14th.
Wants to sign this water.
I think just Michael. Michael's gonna sign it, and then we'll.
Mike or Dan.
Compliance. Can they get a copy of that letter that, from Margaret? Is it the one from Margaret? Is that what you mean, or
Yeah, did we have a
the
copy?
paperwork that Ian drafted up?
Both.
Well, did you get it?
He wants a copy of the letter from Margaret and the draft that Ann drafted.
Well, the draft is a draft, and so we're not going to release that.
Okay.
So
And
it's-
what about the letter from,
The letter is going to be incorporated into denial.
okay.
So when denial is issued, you get a copy of it. Okay? Thank you. All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
I'll work on
That's
that
okay.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sheila?
That's enough. That's enough.
Okay.
Grove Street Properties,
Okay.
275 Washington.
That's
And
the
he wants to look at
certificate
those.
of compliance.
This is the one,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
seeking certificate of compliance.
All right.
This was from Glenn Kowalski, by the way. Did everyone get one of these?
No.
No. Okay. Any comments on the May 14th meeting minutes?
Is there going to be an issue approving them, being that Daniel Carpenter is no longer,
Well,
because Louise and Chuck were absent?
that's a great question.
I mean, it's three of us. Must be a workaround.
Well, there were 2 absent. There were 4 present. I mean, I think we can approve it. Ms. Weston, what do you think?
I think I would err on the side of caution and ask for an opinion from town clerk.
Okay.
Put those off.
I think that's a great idea. Okay, May 28th.
My only comment on May 28th is that in the adjournment, on May 28th, Mr. Carpenter had already resigned from the board due to his election to the board of selectmen.
I think he
So I
was,
think it's probably Mr. Reich that was the second on the adjournment.
Considering that he was absent that evening, I think you're
then I
right.
don't, yeah.
oh,
So if there, I guess by cross-elimination, Mr. Wright was the person that
That's probably the
seconded
case.
my motion.
I
to
don't
adjourn.
recall, but that's most likely.
sorry about that.
He was there in spirit.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Okay. Aside from that change, are there any other changes for the meeting minutes of May 28th? Okay. Is there a motion to approve them?
I move that we accept the meeting minutes of May 28th as
Amended?
amended.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Okay. And we have meeting minutes for June 11th. Any comments? I had a comment, Sheila, on page 3, third line down.
Yeah?
It says the site shall be stabilized. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I think there should be more added to that. My memory, and again, this is my memory, was that the site would be stabilized within 14 days of completion of work. Do you remember that?
I remember
Well,
the disturbed area won't be redisturbed within 14 days or something like that.
All right. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
So we can clarify that.
Yeah,
Why don't we just pass the meeting minutes of June 11th on to the next meeting?
okay.
Okay?
So I think on 6/25, I was just doing that, it was the letter from Joanna Capeland stating that the disturbed area, something about 14 days. If it sits there for 14 days, then it can't be redisturbed or something.
I just think I think the language is included in the filing, so we should clarify that.
All right.
Okay, and my understanding is that you are still working on the minutes for June 25th?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any other business?
You need to make a decision on
Oh.
request to amend
That's right.
the
Okay.
order
A-
conditions.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
May I have a motion? Or any discussion? May I have a motion?
I'd make a motion that we approve the request to amend the order conditions as outlined in the bylaws. else afterwards.
Okay. And that's in a filing by Mr.
Graves Engineering.
Andre dated June 30th of 2014. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote.
And just site inspections, I don't know if you wanted to set a time for those, you wanted to do the 275? Is that the only one?
I think the only site inspection right now would be for 275. I'm going on vacation Friday, so I really won't be back to do a site inspection until July 20th. But I will,
So people just
if
want
other
to
members
do
want to
it
go.
whenever? Or
On
you're
the
gonna go as a
20th,
group or just
That's a
go?
Sunday.
Oh, it's a Sunday.
It'll probably be, I don't have my schedule yet, but that'll probably be doable.
Okay, all right, we can set it up.
7:20?
7:20, that's a Sunday. We'll figure out a time.
Okay.
What about, so we're not going to the place that had the ORAD today? Because you guys said you couldn't be there, but you couldn't get in last night.
Based on Mr. Rockwell's presentation, I think he thoroughly vetted the project.
Okay.
So I'm satisfied with his work. We know the quality of
Right.
Dr. Rockwell's work, so I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I read the thing.
He indicated in his report that we walked through the entire site.
Yeah, I know he did.
I have no doubt.
Okay. Is there any other business? Before we adjourn, I would like to thank Ann Weston for 22 years of outstanding service as chairman of this board. I've been on the board for 19 years, and there's been a lot of change on this board. There's been a lot of change in the town. I like to think that we have complied with the law and the regulations. We've attempted to be fair and honest with all applicants before us. I know Ann has done so, has thoroughly researched and analyzed applications that have been submitted before us. I applaud her service as chairman of the board. You're welcome. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.